Yo, hey, how's everybody doing? I apologize for not getting these videos loaded earlier and getting them loaded sooner. I wanted to have them actually loaded by like Wednesday or Thursday. I got the first video done, I think it was Thursday or something like that, or Friday morning. But I have been back and forth um, in the lab for the last 3 days. As a matter of fact, up until this morning, I had had 2.5 hours of sleep in 3 days. That's how often I've been back and forth between work and the lab. So it's just been nuts. But what this is video number 2. Now, I wanted to get into the tissues and talk a bit more about the 4 types of tissues, because I know people struggle with that chapter, and they struggle with it because it's a topic that's not normal. It's not common. I mean, it's not like um, you're out at Applebee's having a conversation about tissues. You may have a conversation about using tissue to blow your nose, but you're definitely not having a conversation about the body tissues. So let's talk about tissues a little bit and get into that. 4 types of tissue. There's epithelial tissue, there's connective tissue, there's muscular tissue, and there's nervous tissue. And you're going to find in this chapter that not a lot is said about nervous tissue and muscular tissue. And the reason for that is because nervous tissue and muscular tissue have their own chapters later on. Muscular tissue is going to be chapter 10. That's going to be like a whole section of stuff all by itself. And then nervous tissue has its own chapter, which I believe is chapter 12. And then you branch off into the specific organs of nervous tissue, like a chapter on the brain, a chapter on the spinal cord, things like that. So don't worry about not seeing a whole lot of stuff in there about the nervous tissue and the muscular tissue. Trust me, there's enough to go around. This chapter really focuses in on a lot on epithelial tissue and connective tissue, because those 2 tissues are supportive tissues, and you see them everywhere. And the very next chapter, which is the integument, is made up of connective tissue and epithelial tissue. So you got to understand epithelial tissue and connective tissue, because the very next chapter is dealing with epithelial tissue and connective tissue. So let's start off with epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is a tissue that's always covering something. Always. It's always covering something. It covers and it protects. It's a type of tissue that you have that is a selective wall. Oftentimes, epithelial tissue is existing for the purpose of either regulating what can pass or making sure things don't pass. So, for example, you have keratinized, stratified, squamous epithelial tissue that's on the surface of your skin that makes your epidermis. Because you have that kind of epithelium, that's epithelial cells that are trying to resist the movement of things passing back and forth. You're not trying to get anything in. You're trying not to let anything out either. But when you have something like simple squamous epithelium, that's not much protection at all. That's not built for protection. That is built for the purpose of selectively allowing things to rapidly pass back and forth. So understand, epithelial tissue is all about covering. It's a layer that covers it. It's a tarp. It's wallpaper. It's shingles on a roof. That's what epithelial tissue is. Things that cover something. Things that cover something. Always remember that out of the 4 tissue types, epithelial tissue is always going to be the most superficial. All right. Like the most superficial layer of my skin is made out of epithelial tissue. The deepest layer of my skin is actually made out of connective tissue. So, and that's because connective tissue is always connecting something. It's always attaching something. So epithelial tissue is always about covering something. That every time you see it, like you see examples in the textbook about simple columnar epithelium, simple columnar epithelium covers it covers the inside of your digestive tract. Simple cuboidal epithelium, you'll see simple cuboidal epithelium, especially stratified cuboidal epithelium. Those are lining tubes. Simple cuboidal epithelium, you'll see it lining the kidneys, and those are actual tubes in kidneys. You always see it lining something. It's always covering something all the time. So you have to remember that epithelial tissue covers something. Another thing is that epithelial tissue is named based on the shape of the cell, the number of layers of cells stacked on top of one another. That's generally how we name most epithelial tissue. If it's simple, it's one layer. If it's stratified, it's two or more. The shapes are squamous, which are flat, columnar, which are tall, cuboidal, which are cube shaped, and those shapes mean something. Um, I'm about I'm close to 6'6". Um, I will admit that in all my years of playing basketball, both organized basketball and for fun, I have rarely ever had a problem getting picked on a team. Usually I'm one of the first people to get picked when I'm standing on a court. They look around, two guys are picking who's going to be on their teams. They look at me and it's like, I got big man right there. Now, having played ball for a while, I know that I'm not that big and I'm not that tall. 6'6" is kind of short in basketball. But to the average dude who's probably out there, I'm probably one of the taller guys out there. So they pick me because I'm tall. My height and my body build says, hey, that guy can probably play. He will probably spend a lot of time getting rebounds, maybe dunking on some people. I want him on my team. That's to be expected because they're basing it on how I look. So you have to use your imagination when you're looking at these cell shapes. If it's columnar, it's tall, which means that as a wall, it's a tall wall. And if you're looking at it from a top-down perspective, that height now becomes thickness because you're looking at it from the top down. So if it's a columnar cell and now it's tall, and I'm looking at it from the top down, kind of like this remote control. So this remote control, it's tall, okay. And if you're looking at it from above, you'd be looking at it from this direction. And so traveling from the top of that cell all the way to the bottom of that cell would be quite a distance. So you would have a columnar cell somewhere where you wanted to protect things because it would actually be like, it would make some type of thickness. You would not walk in with a squamous cell talking about, I'm gonna protect this from acid. Yeah, whatever. That's a squamous cell. Dude is flat. All right. He's flat like the cell phone. So the cell phone is real flat. This is not going to protect much. Not going to protect much at all. So you wouldn't want something this you wouldn't want something this thick to have to protect you. You would want something that was like that thick to protect you. If you had a choice as to whether or not to stand behind a wall where the bricks of the wall were this thick, or you could stand behind a wall that was this thick, which one would you choose? I'm pretty sure no one would stand behind a wall this thick in order to avoid getting hit by a bullet. You'd stand behind a wall that was this thick. So you have to think the same way with these cells. If you got a cell that's squamous and it's flat, then it can't offer but so much protection. So you'd expect it to be in a place that doesn't encounter heavy resistance, heavy attacks, heavy trauma. You wouldn't use simple squamous epithelium to cover your face. I mean, every time you wash your face, even washing your face with your bare hands, you would scrape the skin right off your face. You'd be exposing blood vessels and everything. It'd be a hot mess. So I know I keep drilling this and I keep saying it over and over again, but it's a concept that people usually blow past. They usually don't get it. They miss the questions on the test, and then they think that, hey, I don't see this word anywhere else. I should be okay. Then, as soon as they get into um, as soon as they get into the next chapter with the integument, they're hit with the tissues. So they struggle in the integument. Then you don't get hit with epithelial and connective tissue um, that much for the rest of 210. And they think that they've survived. And then they get to 211. And then 211, this spends copious amounts of time going through the tissues again. And they're like, you know what? I really hate the tissues. And no offense, I understand. I feel you on that. But it's something that's going to make your life a lot easier and a lot easier to understand if you get the tissues now. So that's why I keep repeating this over and over again. Um, so those shapes, cuboidal is half and half. So cuboidal is going to be in a place where you really need to get things across a barrier, but at the same time, you want to be very selective about it. So cuboidal is not readily going to let anything pass, but it can. So it's going to be selective. It's going to say, hey, I'm going to let this in. I'm going to let this out because I chose to do it. If I don't want it to come out or go in, then it's not. But it's also going to be located in a place that's like detailed, a place that's deep within your body, like something deep within your kidney, something that's not going to come into contact with a lot of physical abrasion or physical activity. So you wouldn't have simple you wouldn't have simple cuboidal epithelium on the bottom of your feet. That's not going to happen because you step on your feet all the time. So you'd wear that out. You'd wear that out by the time you put your shoe on. So you don't want to do that. So that's squamous, cuboidal, columnar. That's what those shapes are. And then how many layers you want is just dependent on where the tissue is going to be. If the tissue is going to be protecting my entire body and protecting me from the outside, I want it to be stratified. If I want that tissue to be in my lungs so I can exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, I want it to be simple. Stratified is going to give me lots of layers so that I can protect myself and I can get rid of the old layers that I tear up and make new layers immediately. Simple is going to be one layer thick. So yeah, I want that to be one layer thick inside my lungs because deep within inside my lungs, the only thing that should be down there should be oxygen and carbon dioxide, nothing else. You see connective tissue. Connective tissue is exactly its namesake. It connects things. Every connective tissue that you learn connects something. That's just the way it works. You see dense, regular connective tissue as tendons and ligaments. Tendons attach muscle to bone. Ligaments attach bone to bone. You see dense, irregular connective tissue. That's an entirely different connective tissue that you can find in between the vertebrae of your back. They're trying to resist movement. You have adipose tissue. Adipose tissue, it cushions, it stored energy, but at the same time, it also attaches your skin, helps to attach your skin to the rest of your body. And one claim to fame for connective tissue is that connective tissue always has three things. Connective tissue has specialized cells. Connective tissue has protein fibers, and connective tissues have some type of matrix. The specialized cells are just cells that they underwent mitosis, they underwent cell division, they didn't have a job, and now they do. So connective tissue, it has cells that, normally these cells were probably like basic stem cells with no definitive marking about them, no real job. And then they undergo something called differentiation, where they become a specific cell and with a special job. And that's what that cell is going to be for the rest of that cell's life. It's never going to shift jobs. It's just going to be that job and that job alone, or it may gain some jobs, but it never goes backwards to just being a plain bland cell. So that's a specialized cell. Protein fibers like collagen and elastin, fibrinogen, these are protein fibers. These protein fibers make or break a connective tissue. The protein fibers give that connective tissue its special qualities and properties. Reticular connective tissue has reticular protein fibers in it. Those are made for structure, the structural purposes. Um, Collagen protein fibers are there for strength. So you find lots of collagen in things like cartilage and ligaments. Elastin fibers or elastic fibers, these protein fibers are there so things can stretch. So this would be in like elastic cartilage, like the cartilage that you have in your nose, actually in your ears, because see how your ear can fold and then it can bend right back. That's elastic cartilage. So connective tissue is amazing. Connective tissue is used to anchor your skin to the rest of your body. That's the bottom layer of your skin is all connective tissue, literally attaches your skin to the rest of you. And so when you're studying the connective tissue, keep all of that in mind. Oh, the matrix of a connective tissue, that's what the specialized cells and the protein fibers are suspended in. They're suspended in a matrix. For most of the connective tissues that you're going to talk about in 210 and 211, the matrix is going to be something solid, something tangible, something that you can pick up and hold in your hand. But blood is considered a liquid connective tissue. And blood, of course, is a liquid. It's a solution. So how can you say that? What does blood connect? Well, blood has fibrinogen in it, which is a protein fiber. Fibrinogen, when you get a cut or scrape or a bruise, it converts fibrinogen into fibrin, which allows you to make blood clots. And blood clots are solid, and it connects one broken wall to another, therefore cutting back on the bleeding. So that's why blood is considered a liquid connective tissue. Last but not least, we have muscle tissue and we have nervous tissue. Muscle tissue, you have three types of muscle tissue. There's cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle is only found in the heart. It's only found in the heart. It is very similar to skeletal muscle. Excuse me. It's very similar to skeletal muscle in how it functions and certain internal structures. Physically, cardiac muscle does not look like skeletal muscle because cardiac muscle is branched, skeletal muscle is not. Cardiac muscle is short, skeletal muscle is not. Cardiac muscle is attached end to end. Skeletal muscle is not. Skeletal muscle is found all over your body. There are some 600 plus different muscles of the body, and they're all made up of skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle's claim to fame is it contracts so that it can help you move your body. That's why there's an entire chapter dedicated to it, so you can learn how this muscle tissue works. The last muscle tissue is smooth muscle. Smooth muscle doesn't look like cardiac. Smooth muscle doesn't look like skeletal. Smooth muscle has a smooth appearance, which is why it's called smooth. And smooth muscle is only found in places like hollow organs inside your body. Smooth muscle is what allows your hollow organs to contract and move food and mix things up. Kind of like your stomach. Your stomach is made up of a few layers of smooth muscle that is used to like mix food and help digest food. Last but not least is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is, they say about like this much about it in the chapter, and that's because chapter 12 gets all into nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is really special because it's all about the nerve cells, specifically neurons. And neurons have the capability of sending electrical signals so that you can communicate with other tissues and other cells. Well, that's all I have to say about the tissues. If you have questions about the tissues, shoot me some emails. Like I said, I've been in the lab back and forth all weekend. I'll be back in the lab again tomorrow. But the cool thing is I get my email on my laptop and on my cell phone, so I can respond to email and I can respond to questions. That's about it for now. If you get, like I said, you got any questions about the tissues, let me know. I'll let you later. Peace.